Can we see Bitcoin back underneath 40,000, more specifically 35 to 38,000? Solana back underneath 100, Ethereum back underneath 1,500, and XRP back underneath $1. We're going to talk about today's video. For those that are already like, what in the world? That seems absolutely madness for things to drop that far. However, if you're experienced and you've been in crypto for a while, you know that these patterns have repeated where we've had 70 to 90% retracements back on a lot of crypto names, specifically our stable coins, i.e. Bitcoin, as the main driver here. All right. So in today's video, I want to be unbiased. I want to give you a technical analysis on the charts and some patterns that we have seen. I want to make it quick and informational for you here on this channel, specifically towards the person that knows absolutely nothing about the charts or the patterns that have repeated themselves. All right. So my name is Dr. B. Happy Thanksgiving. If you're watching this on Thanksgiving in 2025, I appreciate you so much for the just loving support here on the channel, right? I would welcome anyone that has any comments. If you have something to add to this, right? Think of yourself as a part of a family and a community that if you're coming here and you're like, man, he missed this or he missed that, like put it down in the comments so someone who's watching can also get more value, right? Just want to make sure that everyone is in high spirits, high energy, right? And we will make sure everyone is trying to win. That's all we're trying to do here. All right. So without further ado, I want to give as much correct information as I always try to do on this channel to make sure that people are informed correctly. All right. So the first thing that we got is we have to define what a crypto winter is simplistically. All right. So it is a significant decline in cryptocurrency prices, market capitalization, investor sentiment, and overall crypto ecosystem. During this crypto winter, you can see Bitcoin and other altcoins drop 70 to 90%, trading volumes plummet, many projects, coins that don't have the liquidity, right, or the backing fail, right? NFT projects, so on and so forth. Like new things are trying because a lot of money is rotating in the markets. Media coverage turns overwhelmingly negative, saying, yeah, you know, this, I don't know. Like, you know, we see all these, you know, we see JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon pulling his money out. We see big money investors pulling their money out of Bitcoin, right? So those sentiments will begin to present simply because the narrative is that they're taking their profits. We went from 15,000 to 126,000. Okay. So people are warranted to take their profits for liquidation purposes, for reinvestment, right? To buy the dip lower, to drive prices back down, to have tax benefits, whatever it might be, to borrow on that designated cash, whatever it is, right? However, this time could be slightly different simply because we have more institutional buying. We have more stability in the modern day era of crypto being utilized in mainstream. It's still not completely there, but we have here on the West Coast, I see a Bitcoin withdrawal machine, right, in our gas station. So these things are happening and they're becoming more present, which could kind of alter this pattern that we have a 70 to 90% pullback, right? Or retracement. So I want to keep that in mind that this is presenting patterns, but patterns can always change, right? Retail investors largely exit the market in a capitulatory fashion, just completely panic mode. It drops tremendously where they just can't handle anymore their why of why they're investing into this said stable coin, i.e. Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency, just completely goes out the window. So they're a believer, and then when it starts to pull back drastically just because they bought at the wrong time or they don't want to hold for the $500,000, $1 million mark, then there you go, right? No, the new investor in 2021 was like, man, 71,000 sounds crazy. Now 100,000 sounds crazy. Well, maybe $500,000, well, maybe $1 million, well, maybe 2 million, right? So you have to look at this not from a number perspective, but from a pattern perspective of how these levels can potentially get to that next level. We have to have more liquidity, right? So let's jump into the charts. Let's just go in the charts. All right. So I want to bring up this image here from 2015 to 2025, right? So working from the left to the right, you can see that in 2015, we had this 1,000-day period, over 1,000 days, roughly 2.5 years or so. And we had this low of all-time lows and accumulation, right, for investors, where it's just stagnant at the lows. Anyone that believed in Bitcoin prior to 2015, 2008, 2010, you know, those were the times I was in pharmacy school where I remember looking at my screen like, oh my goodness, what is this Bitcoin thing, right? So we've got this time frame where now in 2017, it goes to 17, 20,000, right? In a very expedited fashion. And then we have a 365-day window where people are like, oh my gosh, let me sell, take profit. Big institutional investors are also taking their profit, pulling it back, right? Now we've got, again, this 2018 low during the tariff situation, right, with Trump, his first tariff season. And we have this situation of, again, over 1,000 days, 3.5 years, right? And then we have this run up, right? So most individuals, if you're, seasoned in this, you know that crypto seasonalities typically run about 4 years, a 4-year cycle, right? We have the Bitcoin halving season, so on and so forth. So that run up, if we look here, this 365-day period in 2022 was our true stock market bear market. Okay. We pulled back 20% from the highs in 2022. We had Meta back at $80, so on and so forth. A lot of tech stocks underneath $100 at their complete all-time lows. Okay. So Bitcoin gave back everything almost to the T from 2021. And you can see on the chart that it came back underneath 20,000, more specifically around 15,000. I'll never forget going into 2023, like 15 to 17,000 on Bitcoin. Okay. So that was that seasonality. If you know, of this bearish seasonality of crypto winter for just every single altcoin, Bitcoin, so on and so forth. Right. Then look what happens in this 1,000-day period yet again from 2022 to 2025, where we are now. So guess what the sentiment is yet again? Man, what? No, don't drop. You got to remember, we went from 15,000 to 126,000 in the same time frame. Okay? So anyone who bought at 125,000, right, are the people typically, if you're a seasoned investor, that is seeing 1 million on Bitcoin, that is seeing 500,000 on Bitcoin. You're holding for the long term. But what happens during these extreme bull runs, specifically in crypto, is that if you're not thinking long term, if you're thinking like, I need to make this money now, and you never take profit, then you're not ready for the bearish seasonality that will come and does come. But to what extent this time? So you see this window right here going into 2026 is kind of what we're seeing right now, right? And I'll show you on my chart in just a second, a key indicator that I'm using to look at the pattern that repeated from 2021. So we reached 126,000 and we're back to roughly 91,000 at the time of this recording at the end on Thanksgiving of 2025. Okay. So it dropped underneath 100,000 back to 80 and it's trying to get back to 100. Okay. Now look what happened right here yet again. So you see the drop, right? And it's going to try to retrace potentially back to all-time highs to take them out. But we're still entering into a potential yearly downtrend crypto market that is not even seen yet. This little blip right here is not a bear market, right? It is a bearish seasonality because we pull back 20%, but it's not a true that crypto winter 50%, 70%, 90% retracement from the highs. Okay. So I want to keep this in your mind just to see the patterns. So you're like, what if it does happen? Am I prepared? And if it doesn't, then cool, I'm still involved. You get my drift? So let's jump into the actual chart here that I have on Bitcoin. Okay. And let's look at the pattern. And I want to keep my buy zones up here. And I want to look on a weekly time frame. Okay. So I want you to look here. It looks exactly like the chart that I just pulled up a minute ago. Here we are at 2018, right? There's 2017, okay? There's 2021. And I want you to keep an eye on this 50-day moving average on a weekly time frame that is rolling here throughout this chart, okay? Do you see this lime green line, the 50-day moving average, okay? And I want you to watch from 2018, when it falls underneath that 50-day moving average, it can reject it and remain underneath it, which pulled Bitcoin after it fell from roughly 20,000, fell underneath the 50-day moving average back to 8,000 and fell all the way back to roughly 3,000 as it stayed below that 50-day moving average, right? So then we come into 2019, it starts to get back above the 50-day moving average, right? Dips back below, there's 2020 right there. But as it reclaims, there is our next 2020, 2021, just absolute rally. But here is where the pattern, in my opinion, looks very, very similar at this 50-day moving average right here. Do you see where we dropped first in 2021? And we finished out 2021 with strength, right? So that's finishing out 2021 with strength. Look at the bottom of my chart there. You see November 12th, 2021, when it reached its high of 69,000. Okay. And then we pulled into the holidays as extreme profit taking began happening, and we fall underneath that 50-day moving average. But do you see we fall there and we recover and bounce? This bounce right here goes where? Right into the 50-day moving average and rejects. So what level was that? So it falls from 69,000, roughly 50%, back down to 30. That's a buy opportunity, right? Right. So anytime there's buying going on or picking up the dip, right, the question is always, someone is specifically without a chart, where's the actual dip? And that's a lot of people's questions in general is this the dip? Is that the dip? Is this the dip? Right. And you've got to be prepared for all scenarios. Right. So when someone says, man, this might not be the full dip, it doesn't mean don't buy. It doesn't mean don't invest in your favorite asset classes. Right. It just means that, hey, are you prepared for even more of a dip? Because if you're not, then you can't stand the rain. Right. You can't stand where you bought it because you don't have the right intention of investing long term. Because if you bought this here at 30,000 and then you're like, oh, my goodness, it's at 17, it's at 15, I'm out. Right. Then your mindset here is not the right long-term investor mindset for the asset you're buying, because you're buying more specifically probably for maybe just, hey, I want to be a millionaire off of this, right? I want to be a multi-six-figure crypto investor, or I want to have a couple extra grand in my pocket, and then it pops and it falls lower, right? So I want you to keep this pattern in mind here. Let's look at the 69,000 back to 50. There's 77% from the highs. So remember what I told you before, that 70 to 90% retracement in a crypto winter season. Okay. Now let's go here. I want you to keep this line on your charts. Okay. Look at what we've done, and we've held this 50-day moving average, right? Until we fell below the 50-day moving average, which was right here. Okay. And that's where the first level of panic began to happen from certain quote unquote new investors, or anyone in general is like, whoa, hold up. I'm buying more. I'm buying more. Hold up. I'm buying, hold up. I'm buying more. Hold. Thank you. Right. That's the emotions that typically happen. So even though, and that's why I love technicals, is because I'm not a technical person only. I take into account fundamentals, institutional buying, right? The popularity of the asset, that it could continue, and the momentum could just be a very shallow pullback, right? However, if this follows the pattern, this could be a dead cat bounce off of this support level. We could go all the way back up to 100, right? Even to 103, and then reject again. And then there is our true downtrend. Okay. There's my buy zone 1. There's my buy zone 2 at 60. And there's my buy zone 3 back at 40,000. Okay. So I'm watching this 50-day moving average, right, very keenly over the next, couple of months or whatnot. Is how do we finish out the year? Because there's a lot of overhead resistance up here. Even though people are still buying, it doesn't mean don't buy. It just means that simply that's a lot of overhead resistance that is trapped right now. So if investors, right, want to drive the price of Bitcoin down, right, they will get retail investors to spend their last up here, right, not be prepared for buy zone 2 and not be prepared for buy zone 3, right? Simply from the pattern repetition of back in 2021, right? Because they don't want us to know this stuff, right? They don't want us to know this stuff. So long term, we're looking up here, right? Many investors, we're looking up here, right? And then that's a little drastic, right? I apologize for that, but you're looking up here. You're not concerned about this. So if you hear anyone ever saying, you know, buy this here, keep buying more, keep buying more, keep buying more, right? Okay, cool. Right. But also for the new investor, the person that doesn't know a thing and just says, okay, I'll buy some, right? And you don't know the patterns or what it is or what you're investing into or even have a chart in front of me. I'm showing you patterns because a lot of people are visual learners. So as you're a visual learner here, you can see here the possibility. There's buyers sitting right there. How do you know there's buyers? Because that's a bull flag and there's buyers that are stepping up right there. You can see it holding and rotating off of that 50, and then acceleration and extension comes off of that level, right? So I know there's a lot of people aren't pattern people. They aren't really technical analysts and whatnot, but I think the technicals are where the money's made because they show pattern repetition combined with what's happening in the news, so on and so forth. Right. So if I'm looking at this, I'm like, well, that's below the 50-day moving average on a weekly time frame, and we have broken it, and we could find some support, but then we could reject and keep rolling over because the trend has changed, and then the trend goes back down, very similar to this. Pops lower, pops higher, rolls, 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 capitulation, panic, everyone sells. Cool. Big investors pick up money. Everyone else lost down here. They didn't hold, and then we rotate back up. Right? When no one's thinking about it. Okay. So this is where the intro came from of this buy zone of 35 to 38,000. Okay. Now, for those technical people out there that are familiar with Fibonacci retracements, if you're not, that's okay. It's a tool we use to show the retracement percentage and where big money likes to pick up the dip. Okay. So if I draw a Fibonacci retracement from the lows of 2022 to the extreme highs of where we are now, just in case this is the top for the current time frame, okay, you can see these percentages that come back, okay? So big money, and then I should draw it the other, let's draw it the other way, okay? So 100% retracement will be all the way back down to 15, right? However, big money likes to typically pick up the dip around the 38.2% retracement or the 61.8% retracement, okay? And we call this pocket between the 78 to 61, the golden pocket, right? Where that is where smart money, big money likes to pick up the dip. You want me to show you what it looks like on this 2021. So if I retrace this back from the last dip here, okay, to the extreme highs, back to the extreme lows, okay? I want to bring it to right there maybe, okay? Now, if I do it from this 15, that's a different story, right? But I'm looking at this right here, the extreme highs, and maybe an investor brought it from here, okay? Maybe investor brought it from here. And I don't want to overwhelm anyone here because, you know, a lot of stuff on the screen, you're already starting to tap out like I'm confused, okay? So I never want to lose anybody on the video. However, if I draw this from the top of 2021 to the bottom, right, of where we bounced, I want you to look right where big money kind of started to try to pick up the dip here, which is right around that 38.2 to 23.6, right in that bottom kind of third there. They tried to hold that and take it back up, but it could not get back above the 50% retracement. If we had got back above the 50%, then it's going to retrace back to the highs and most likely try to take out the highs, right? So that is another tool that technical investors use to see where smart money / big money / the institutions, politicians like to pick up the dip. So if I do the same thing from the extreme lows to the extreme highs, right, I can see yet again that this bottom third is where big money would like to ideally pick it up. Now they can start picking it up, you know, right here and hold it above 60. That's why that buy zone 2. They can obviously pick it up at the 61.8. Look exactly where we bounced. Right? That's not ironic. That's not a happenstance, right? There are millions of investors, maybe potentially billions, millions that are looking at the same chart, right? It's just about who is relevant and knowing about it. And that's why myself would like to present this information out to people who have no idea, right? So there is the golden pocket. Okay. So look at where the acceleration, ironically, of where Bitcoin began to accelerate back in 2023 of October. Guess what? When it got back above that 50 weekly moving average, this accumulation bull flag here, which everyone was looking at like, oh my goodness, Bitcoin at 27,000. It's that time. Okay. And we started talking about it heavily inside of our community back in 2023, 2024, when it was at those price points, right? You can see these dates right here and all the way back here. We were talking about it, 2023, right? And we were showing patterns, right? Bitcoin price history right here. And there was the pattern, right? Do you see that right there? Look at where Bitcoin was when it was curling right at 15,000 right there, 2024 halving, right? And we were talking about picking up Bitcoin underneath 27,000, XRP underneath 50, right? So there's the timestamp of the time we were talking about this particular pattern happening yet again. ETH right at 1,500, okay? So we're very well aware that this pattern could repeat, right? Now, Brian, well, how do you know that it's going to stop right there, right? Well, based off institutional buying and looking at Bitcoin and crypto as a true asset class now, it's more than ever proven itself, right? It's still going to be volatile and patterns can still repeat themselves so people can pick up more extreme dips. Imagine if you can pick up Bitcoin back at 50,000 and now it's more proven and you've done more research on it in modern day, and even Gen Z is coming up buying more, right? The amount of money that is being made with AI and entrepreneurship now and so on and so forth, right? That is actually a really good thing to drive the price even lower, right? Because then we can all win, right? Keeping it up here, right? The folks that aren't able to buy it up here or even get a full Bitcoin, maybe some people can get a full Bitcoin at underneath 30, underneath 50. They're like, man, I got like 20, 30, 40,000. Like I maybe buy a whole one, right? So that is a good thing for everybody, right? And we need to pay attention to that. All right, let me speed it up here. Look at Ethereum, same thing. Okay, Ethereum, same thing. We can see Ethereum back down to fill some of these gaps potentially. And as more people are probably just investing in Bitcoin, there's a trend line there. Okay. And if we stop maybe around 2000 or we pull back, right, it's still like a double top here. And, you know, in general, Tom Lee talking about, you know, Ethereum going to 6,000 by the end of this year. It's just like, yeah, okay. All right. Solana, same thing. Okay. We got some situation going on here. If it breaks underneath this 125, it's coming back underneath 100. Okay. If it breaks underneath this 125, 120 level, starts getting underneath here, this little weak little bounce right here, and it's underneath the 50 and then rolls back over, right? We could see Solana back down to underneath $100. Okay. So it's not out of the question that 50-day weekly moving average is very key. Well, Brian, what if it doesn't do it? Okay. Well, watch the reclaim, as we call it. From a technical standpoint, that means we get back above 200. We start holding above 200 and start trickling. Well, there you go. That was the dip. Well, yeah, what about Bitcoin? Okay, cool. We get back above the 50, back above 110, in my opinion, hold above 108, and then we start going. Cool. The bull trend continues. All right. But now that we're underneath this 50 weekly, we got to pay attention to that. Okay. Now let's look at XRP, which everyone is concerned about. What do you think about XRP? What do you think about XRP? I just look at the charts, right? You saw where we bought XRP underneath, 60 cent, right? Down into the 50 cent mark, down back here. Okay. We were talking about XRP back here, right? This accumulation phase when it goes sideways and just sits there after a big pop, 2021, and just sits in accumulation. And you're just waiting and waiting and waiting for it to happen. There it goes, right? So now we're kind of consolidating in this kind of bullish consolidation here where people are like, oh my gosh, hold up, please hold up. And there's a possibility from just a technical standpoint that whenever we see a straight up move like that, right, that is a very low volume move straight to the upside. Okay. So when you have a straight up move, you don't go straight up again, right? That's not how the markets work from stable coins, right? If you want XRP, and we all believe, in my opinion, that XRP can be that thing, then you want it to start stabilizing. You want it to have these consolidation periods. You want it to even pull back more drastically like that, back underneath the dollar, and then start building and start stair stepping, right? You want it to start stair stepping naturally, not these volatile moments. If we go to gold, let's go to GC. Okay. If you want Bitcoin and crypto to be like gold, you want it to start stair stepping naturally. Okay. There's the consolidation period on gold, the accumulation period during 2021, and it's stair stepping. Do I think it's a little overextended? Yeah, but it is a stable currency. So you have this upward trend, and every dip is getting bought and it's rotating back up, but it's not these volatile swings back and forth like crypto is, right? So back here, you have 2021 straight up and then straight down, and then you come up, and then you can see that it's more stable here. Nice bull flag consolidation, extension, bull flag consolidation, extension. Okay, cool. Maybe we form what we call a head and shoulders. There's the neckline. There's the right shoulder, and then there. All right, maybe we form something like that to bring it lower, but we're just paying very close attention. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to end there. All right. This was for informational purposes only, to put this chart out there from a technical perspective of how Bitcoin and crypto could have that crypto winter down 70 to 90%. However, we could have some pit stops in between where people are like, hey, I want this. I want this. I want this. I don't know if this is the bottom, but I'm going to keep buying. I'm going to keep buying. Right. So do as you please with this information. Let me know what you think down below in the comments based off this information and some of the patterns that you've seen in the past. All right. Thank y'all so much. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy holidays to you. If you want to join Leverage University, which is our Discord platform that you just saw me open up, links down below. We have our Black Friday sale going on until the end of November coming up this weekend. So capitalize on that if you've been on the brink. All right. Peace, love, and blessings. Talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.